All right, all right, all right. In the words of this Matthew McConaughey impersonation, welcome to Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy here on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. And today we're going to get right into it, talking about some big NFL moves.
First
but
of all,
before
Chet,
that,
I got to tell
Chet.
you that Matthew McConaughey impersonation was spot on. Spot on. It was beautiful.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Well,
you got to give another random celebrity impersonation during the show at some point, because that's really one of your sticks. That really that's so Chet. Just give a
well, you see, I mean, with Matthew McConaughey, it's just like a nice stick of butter on a summer day. You just watch that thing melt, and life just moves on in this nice universe of ours. It's just the way things go.
It's a nice stick of butter.
Yeah, just a nice stick of butter. All right, but hopping into one of the biggest moves that's happened this offseason so far, J.J. Watt, biggest player off the table right now, signs a 3-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. And you know what? This move, it's fantastic. I absolutely love this move because you're talking about pairing him up with Chandler Jones. Both of these defensive ends have have 100 sacks, have about 100 sacks since the year 2012 total. So you're talking about career high pass rushers, future Hall of Famers, a fantastic duo to really bulk up this Arizona Cardinals defense. And it's so hard for me to put this into words because I am so goddamn excited for it.
You're goddamn excited?
Yeah. Listen, it's great.
I really think that this is the most exciting time that's ever been for football fans in the desert of Arizona. You got J.J. Watt, you got big names on offense, you got big names on defense, like Chandler Jones, like the young and upcoming Hassan Reddick, longtime veteran Patrick Pierce. Now you're adding J.J. Watt to this roster. This is star-studded roster. Future Hall of Famers. This is a team on the brink of playoff contention last year, and I think with J.J. Watt, they elevate to that level. Especially with 7 teams like we always talk about, teams have a better chance of getting in. This team should have got in if they didn't show up their last 2 games. And that's why I can see why J.J. was excited to go with this team and why you picked them, because they got talent on both sides of the ball. They're young. They're upcoming young head coach in Cliff Kingsbury, who I have, criticized in the past, but he can turn around with this offense and this team as a whole. This is a really talented roster, and J.J. Watt, I'm excited to see what he can do in Arizona, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had our discussions and our disagreements on the Arizona Cardinals, but this really puts them in the conversation as a contender with these 2 pass rushers. Obviously, there are things here and there that they need to work on the defensive side of the ball to really boost that. And then, of course, you have talks like Kenyon Drake, who hasn't even been approached about an upcoming contract for himself to renew with the team. But regardless, this puts the Arizona Cardinals in a conversation for the NFC West. This is a team that can make a push now for the NFC West title and potentially a spot in the playoffs. And with talks of Russell Wilson potentially leaving, that could dwell and really spell a nice way for the Arizona Cardinals to weave their way through all the noise to the top of the division. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But, I mean, you look at J.J. Watt's career stats, he already has 101 sacks. He breached that this season with his 5 sacks that he managed to get. And I mean, the rest speaks for himself. The history books have showed how great J.J. Watt is, a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year winner. And he's just dominant. And the fact that it was sad because his talent was wasted on the Houston Texans. But like you said, Tim, or Duffy, I should say. I always catch myself doing that.
Hey, that's my government name, Tim.
It is your government name, but
Yep.
anyways, you're talking about a veteran coming to a young team, a team that needs that veteran status. Because, I mean, Chandler Jones, he's a veteran, but in addition of another one, such as J.J. Watt, who knows what it's like to be successful, to get this Arizona Cardinals that hasn't seen good times since Carson Palmer was on this team.
Yeah.
And Calais Campbell, of course.
It's
We'll
been
see
a while.
I think we're going to see a turnaround with this team. And if I had to predict right now for their record, I think we're going to see an 11-5 playoff berth for this team. But I don't see them winning the division. I see the LA Rams coming out on top of this division.
Yeah, we've been hyped about the LA Rams. A lot of shaking up in the division this year. Like you were saying, Russell Wilson could be on his way out. I think it's unlikely, but adding J.J. Watt to this division, so many big names to this division. This was already the best, group of 4 teams in the league that I thought even last year. Now with a guy like J.J. Watt, like you were saying, veteran on the team, that Arizona Cardinals team does lack some veteran leadership. They got guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who's reuniting with J.J. Watt in Arizona now, which is going to be huge. I'm just excited to see what they can do. I really think that this team, like you were saying, they could go 11-5. I think they were the favorites to win the division. Don't forget. So after midway through the season, sitting at 5-2, and with JJ Watt, this team can realistically go 11-5, maybe 12-4 if they can click things together on offense. They didn't last year. Shake it up a little bit and diversify the roster. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can really put into words right now is excitement. I mean, we'll see how the team performs going down the line and what the NFC West does. This is just an early indication of how well this team will do going down the road. Very excited things to come for this team.
Oh, yeah.
Now to kind of shift topics a little bit and talk about another player that we just mentioned in the NFC West, there has been trade rumors for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson potentially unhappy with the way this team has been controlled and has been governed since he came. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's now at past age 30. He's a veteran. He's seen the league for so many years, but has constantly had to go through the woes of a poor offensive line. And I'm right there. I'm right there with you, brother Russell. I mean, I'm right there with you. I really am.
Yeah.
I mean,
they failed to build around him, if we're being honest. This is a team that's consistently failed to build around Russell Wilson, whether it was receivers early in his career or an offensive line in the latter parts of his career. He's been getting chased every single game he's played. They've lost games strictly because of their lack of an offensive line. That's the reason why they haven't been able to contend the last few years, really, is because they're not really building around him. And offensive line is really one of the most important units in the National Football League. As we've seen, strong O-lines, they win games, they win divisions, they win Super Bowls. I don't remember the last time we saw an O-line that was bad win a Super Bowl. So if Seahawks want to contend, especially with the plethora of pass rushers in the NFC West, Aaron Donald, now J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, Nick Bosa coming back from an injury last year. That's 6 games where you're going to be struggling up front. So they got to do something about it if they don't want Russell Wilson off this team.
Yeah.
And just to take a little quick sec. We have a little guest coming in. My other podcast host. We release episodes on Thursday called TJ and B. This is my boy Ben Catino coming in to talk some football, among other topics. Ben, how you doing today?
What is up, boys? Sorry I'm a couple minutes late. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. You're always welcome here. So we want to know some of your insights on Russell Wilson. What do you think? Do you think he'll get moved? Do you think he'll stay? What do you think are the best teams that he lands with? Now,
it's interesting because I do think he will get traded this offseason. Now, with these reports coming out, I think he will.
Wow.
Because my question is,
I had to listen to that twice. I was hearing.
Why would he even give a list of teams to the Seahawks if he wants to play for them? That was just what was weird to me.
Yeah.
I think he's unhappy. He doesn't really have a voice in that organization. And obviously a player of his caliber should have a voice in what goes on. I mean, we just saw what happened in Tampa Bay. Tom Brady basically led the show, bringing in Gronk, bringing in AB, and that ultimately brought them a championship. And I believe that Russell Wilson also thinks he can be that sort of figure where if he has a say in who's coming to their team, he really thinks that he can bring them to that championship level. So I do think he's going to get traded. And if I had, if I really had to pick a team, I think it's going to be the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
I think Jerry Jones, this would be a very Jerry Jones-esque move. Dallas really hasn't been on the radar for, I mean, they've been on the radar, but they haven't been a championship-ready team. Basically my whole life, I've never really viewed the Cowboys as like a championship team, but obviously in the past they've had a couple dynasties. This could be the start to another if they bring in, a player like Russell Wilson, and I think they have the best package that they could give for him. I mean, if you can include Dak Prescott, who is arguably a top QB in 10 QB in the league, send him to Seattle with maybe 1 or 2 first rounders. I think that's the best return you can get for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and it all comes down to if Dallas is willing, in my opinion, to even send an offer for Russell Wilson. Like you were saying, Jerry Jones, this would be a very Jerry Jones-esque move. Dallas has not seemed committed to Dak the last few years, giving him the franchise tag last year and probably doing it again this year if he's going to play for the Cowboys. They're going to tag him. They haven't been close on a long-term extension for a long time, as we've seen. But I really think that if Russell Wilson's going anywhere, it's the Chicago Bears. I've seen multiple reports. I don't know how valid they are. No one really knows how valid they are, but that he would be willing to build around a team like the Bears, who have never had a 4,000-yard passer, never had a quarterback throw for 30-plus pass touchdowns, which are crazy feats for a team that's been around for as long as they have. And I think he likes the intrigue of going to a team with a nice young defense, coming off a playoff berth. They're really a quarterback away from probably being a 5 or 4 or 5 seed, not 4 because the Packers won the division, but a higher seed in the playoffs, in my opinion. They would have won a couple more games if they didn't have that quarterback carousel. And I think the Bears could give a good deal. They have a good defense. They give one of those pieces away maybe. Mm-hmm. They have some picks in the draft, and Russell Wilson, if he can go to this team and start a new era of Bears football that we've never seen before. It's one of those teams, like you were saying, about like the Cowboys, that we've never really seen them as a championship team. A lot of it comes down to the quarterback position because we've never seen them have an elite quarterback. So the Bears pull the trigger. I think it'd be really interesting. And I honestly, that's why I put it as the background. Honestly, Russell Wilson against the Bears. It's kind of why I put that. So I think that's a realistic option if he's traded.
Yeah. Well, for me, I do like both of these. I mean, these are obviously good rumors and good ideas, but I mean, it's tough for me to see America's team really sway away from Dak Prescott, especially where the trade could be a very tough one to go through, talking about trading, swapping quarterbacks essentially and picks that are involved. Chicago, I could see definitely.
And going to sign under contract. I ain't even under contract right now, which would make it even tougher too.
That is true.
So he could either go to America's team in Dallas or he could go to the Windy City in Chicago. But you know what? I think there's another team we're not talking about enough, and that's going to be in the Bayou of New Orleans. I think the Saints could easily make a run for this guy. You're seeing a decline in Drew Brees, and we haven't heard an official announcement yet, but all paths lead at this point, it seems, to Drew Brees' retirement. I don't think Saints fans and the Saints organization really want to see the success that they've had with Drew Brees go and just disappear. I think Russell Wilson would fit in nicely. You're talking about a very good O-line down there, a young left tackle, and then you've got Alvin Kamara, you got Michael Thomas. I mean, they just released Jared Cook, but I mean, you can get the talent out there still. And that defense is still very solid with its core that it has. And I think they need leadership from Russell Wilson really to really just push themselves closer to a Super Bowl ring, because this team has been yearning for it for a long time. And I think if Russell Wilson goes there, they've got a pretty good chance at doing it.
You think Russell Wilson would provide a different level of leadership that Drew Brees couldn't?
Oh, absolutely. And a whole new style of offense that comes along with it. You're talking about a guy who can scramble outside of that pocket besides just sitting in it. He can do a whole lot, and you can move Alvin Kamara around a lot. You can still throw Taysom Hill in there too for some packages that nobody's expecting. And then Michael Thomas does Michael Thomas. He'll get open, he'll get those yards, and I think he'll have some great success. But these are all great teams right here that both quarterbacks could end up, that this quarterback could end up in. So, I mean, we mentioned Dak Prescott's name. Does the deal get done? Do they re-sign him? Because right now what we're looking at, he's looking at numbers close to Patrick Mahomes numbers, which Patrick Mahomes is getting paid $45 million a year, which means we're talking somewhere around
At least in the
$30
30s.
million.
Yeah.
Do you think he stays with Dallas?
I
think,
do.
I think
You do?
Yeah.
Why
I
don't
mean,
you
it's tough.
elaborate on that?
I mean, I think he does at least one more year. I think they're going to tag him unless he is dealt for Russell Wilson this year, which I don't see happening.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, but I just don't see how you get rid of this guy who was on pace for really a record-setting season last year before he got injured. You know, he had almost 2,000 passing yards in 4.5 games. He had 1,800 passing yards, which is unbelievable.
He still led the league even after like 3 weeks of being injured.
Yeah, which is a remarkable feat. It doesn't make any sense. So I think you give this guy one more chance, see what he can do healthy. As I was just saying, you know, they have not been committed to him whatsoever. And does he leave after 2021? Maybe. You know, I don't think he'll be this year. I don't think he's going to stay a Cowboy for a long time because of, you know, the kind of rifts they've had in negotiations. But I think he stays at least in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me to say because Jerry Jones he's a weird character. I mean, he is. I mean, the dude's very weird, but it seems like when he gets guys on the Cowboys, they're Cowboys for life. It seems like he's managed to integrate them into the system, but for some reason, they just can't do it with Dak. And I don't know why, because he's been so successful with players like Tony Romo, DeMarco Murray, Des Bryant. And then you talk about Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, all these great Cowboys players that we've seen throughout the years. And for some reason, they can't get Dak Prescott right now. And honestly, it's tough for me to say, but I think Jerry Jones, I mean, I said last week that he'll leave, but to be honest, I might go back on it. I think Jerry Jones is just too full of himself and too much to the point where he wants to keep the Dallas Cowboys intact the way the Dallas Cowboys have been the past couple of years with Dak Prescott and his success. I think this is the only route they should take, is to keep this man, because he's proven year after year, and I think he'll prove it again this season when he just goes ballistic after coming off a broken ankle. I think we'll see a tremendous push forward with him and his career going down the line with the Cowboys.
Do you think it's more on Dak or on, you know, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys that they haven't been able to sign to a long deal? Because like you were saying, you know, he's asking for a lot of money, you know, borderline unrealistic money.
I think it's both, to be honest. I really think it's both sides because, I mean, Dak, he had his struggles, but he's proven himself. But at the same time, he's being a little unreasonable. You're talking about a guy who's easily in the top 10, but definitely not a top fiver. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't think he's in the top 5 in terms of
I would say 6 or 7, you know?
Yeah. I don't think he should be paid Patrick Mahomes money. He's not there yet. He's not, I mean, he couldn't prove it this year, and he couldn't prove it the years before. So why give it to him? If he was playing at the level of Patrick Mahomes, then yeah, why are you holding up negotiations? Pay the freaking man, for crying out loud. But they got to pay him something, but it can't be anywhere close. It can't be that close. I'm sorry. Dak Prescott, I love you, man, but just stop.
I mean, the thing about this though is if Dallas isn't willing to pay that, and he just says, "All right, screw that, I'm leaving," I bet you another team will. I bet you another team will put that 30+ million on the table and say, "Hey, you know what? Let's go all in for this guy."
Yeah,
a surefire top 10 QB that can maybe turn an organization around. You know?
Yeah, because there's organizations out there crazy enough to do it.
When we saw the Vikings with Kirk, you know, give him a fully guaranteed deal, $84 million over 3 years. You're telling me Dak couldn't get $100 million for 3 years, you know?
And Kirk's an absolute bum. He's getting paid.
Yep, he literally is. I mean, he's all right. I mean, he had a good year this year, really big bounce back year. Kind of went under the radar, you know, 35 touchdowns, but is he worth that money? No. Is Dak? Absolutely, in my opinion. You know, he's a young guy. He's still in his, you know, mid-20s, early 20s, pretty much. So I think he I think he's going to get the money from somewhere, whether it's Dallas or not. I agree with Ben.
Yeah. Obviously, this will float around in our discussion for weeks to come because the offseason is approaching and a lot of big moves are happening. So coverage will continue throughout the offseason about moves such as this. But we're going to hit a commercial break real quick. But when we get back, we're going to go into a little bit more of some NFL offseason rumors. But then we're going to jump into some Boston Celtics and talk about how this team, who we were talking so much crap about the last couple of weeks, has finally started to slowly turn it around and really get themselves back on track. We'll see you after the break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy here on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. We're back talking about some more NFL rumors and some stuff going around, some moves that have happened. One of them that was very interesting was the Miami Dolphins, who had signed a 5-year deal worth $51 million to Kyle Van Noy, suddenly go back on that and dump his whole cap space just to make room for who knows what. Could something be coming? But the big question is there a potential reunion with Kyle Van Noy and the New England Patriots?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as soon as I saw that Kyle Van Noy got released, the first thought that came to my head was this Bill Belichick meme that we see with the stone cold music in the background and he's coming out of a tunnel. You know, like Bill's just he's gonna come back, and I think Kyle Van Noy will be back in New England this year. I don't really see, you know, if he's signing a big deal and then getting released, I don't really see another team being so ready to, you know, give him another big contract. I really only see the Patriots having interest, honestly.
Yeah, I do agree. We've seen in the past too, where, you know, guys, it doesn't work for them on one team, and then, you know, they come back to the Patriots. I think Kyle Van Noy can be one of those guys. I mean, he's won a Super Bowl with the Patriots too, actually. 153 was a huge part of the Patriots defense, you know, the last 2 years, and really one of the better players in the team in 2018 and 2019. You know, he had a huge year first half of last year when the Pats defense was the best in the league. I think it's a great fit. I think he really has that Patriot way mentality to him, and I think that he's gonna sign considerably cheap with Belichick. I think he's comfortable here, playing here. He's won here, so why wouldn't he want to come back here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was definitely a very prominent member of that defense, and especially with showing what the Patriot way is as a Patriots player. And his numbers were going up, but I don't know, maybe something scared the Miami Dolphins, because looking at his stats, he did go up a little bit in tackles. He had 40 the season before with the Patriots, 46 with the Miami Dolphins, 6 sacks both seasons, and 2 forced fumble recoveries both seasons. Maybe they just saw the numbers stagnating and were like, this guy, I mean, he's definitely excelled, but maybe he's not the great guy we think he is.
Yeah. I don't think it was worth that money to begin with anyway.
No.
$51 million for 3 years.
And who knows, maybe there was an unhappy relationship with the Miami Dolphins, or maybe they just couldn't come to an agreement to a pay cut, because, I mean, that contract was, to be honest, when I saw that, I was like, this is kind of ludicrous. This is a little ridiculous how much they're paying this guy. I mean, I think he's good, but I don't think he's worth $51 million. Like, give me a break here.
Yeah. We saw with Branch too. You know, he's a prime example of someone who left New England for He actually got traded to Seattle, I think, for a second-round pick.
Mhm.
Didn't do good there at all. And then comes back to New England and reaches Super Bowl and is a key part of the Patriots offense for 2 more years. He's a prime example. I think Van Noy can be one of those guys.
Absolutely. So now to look at some players that have been cut and potentially where they may land, you guys can pick which one you want. I've got 3 that I found, and 3 players that have been cut from organizations that have been longtime veterans. You got Kyle Rudolph being released by the Minnesota Vikings. You got Jared Cook getting released from the New Orleans Saints. And then most recently, the New York Giants parted ways with Golden Tate. For me, I think the biggest move here is probably getting rid of Golden Tate. I mean, that's a veteran guy who has won a Super Bowl before, but obviously his numbers have dipped down. I think he's still got potential spots with other teams. I mean, it's tough for me to pick exactly where, but hey, maybe if Russell Wilson ends up in Chicago, maybe he'll be like, hey, maybe a potential reunion there with my boy. So, I mean, we'll see. But, I mean, definitely kind of shocking. But at the same time, his numbers have dipped.
One thing I absolutely love about this offseason is how wide open the tight end market is. As you just said, Kyle Rudolph, Jared Cook now available. Jonnu Smith is an unrestricted free agent.
Ooh.
Honestly, I really want the Patriots to get Jonnu Smith.
I'd love that.
He's a very versatile tight end with great speed. I mean, the guy is just a dog. I absolutely loved him on Tennessee. I think he could bring a lot of good things to this offense.
Yeah, most definitely. Because, I mean, you look at his body type as a tight end. He's short, I feel, for a tight end. But he's just got that speed and just that size that really just makes him unstoppable. Duffy, I think I cut you off right there.
Yeah, Patriots, like we were just talking about, they need a tight end. I think a guy like Jonnu Smith would be a great fit for the Patriots. Fast tight end. I've seen mock drafts where they're getting Kyle Pitts at 15. Who is, quote, too good of a talent to pass on. I've seen his highlights. He's a beast. He's built like a receiver. He runs like a receiver. He'd be a great fit for the team. I don't think it's realistic the Patriots go for a guy like Kyle Rudolph, who's going up there in age. I think that was a good move by the Vikings, parting ways with him, because he did have a kind of a heavy contract for a guy who was producing at his level, and they can really get a guy like Irv Smith Jr. up and going for the Vikings too. I think second pick the other year, but yeah, I think the Patriots got to address that position. I think these guys would be good options. But who's the other tight end that you said, Chet?
Jared Cook.
Jared Cook too.
Yeah, you brought it. Yeah,
he's been producing, so
yeah.
I think he'll get a good payday with a team. I think get a considerably higher one than the other dudes. But the Pats can get one of these guys, it would be huge.
I mean, let's be honest, too. Anything would be an upgrade from Devin Asiasi, Dalton Keene, and Ryan Izzo. I mean, legitimately, anything would be an upgrade.
Yeah. Any name. I don't care how old they are, to be honest. I mean, if you get Jared Cook, cool. Not Kyle Rudolph, though. That guy is an absolute bum. Can't stand that name.
Wow.
He does.
He was my starting tight end, I think, like 2 years ago in fantasy. I just couldn't. There's really no one else you could get, dude, because it's like the tight end. It's the scarce position. Some leagues, some years.
And tell me not. Fantasy football always talks up Kyle Rudolph every year. And
he's always projected like 10 points.
He's a red zone target,
And he just gets a catch for 7 yards, and then the game's over.
Dude's got hands, though. He had that flashy touchdown this year, that one-hander in the back of the end zone.
He had one last year, if you remember, against Dallas. He always has.
Other than that, he sucks. Doesn't get open.
He gets like 6 points a game. I think it'd be a good week if we got like 8.1. I'd be like, let's go. Rudolph got 8 points. 2 catches, 16 yards, and a touchdown.
All right, to finalize our NFL segment here, we're going to talk about a big trade rumor, and this is definitely a huge trade rumor besides the one we just mentioned. Stephon Gilmore. I have read that apparently NFL executives have said it's a foregone conclusion that the Patriots will trade Stephon Gilmore this offseason. Thoughts?
Ben, you go.
Oh, you can go, Tim.
All right, I was going to say Ben and Chad. I just think this is a long time in the making, And me and Joe were talking about before the show, we've seen the Patriots, get these big name guys and then ship them out once they got enough out of them. We've seen Gilmore win Defensive Player of the Year, win a Super Bowl, be a huge part of both those teams. All four teams he's been on, he's been a huge part of. And we saw with a guy like Darrelle Revis, coming in, elite cornerback for a year, was I think first team All Pro of the year with Richard Sherman, and was arguably the best corner in the league. And they didn't re-sign him the year afterwards. He went to the Jets for $70 million. So I think with Gilmore, his house was on the market midway through the season. He was expecting a trade during the season, as if we all remember that. And it's just been a long time in the making. I think he's getting up there in age, so Pat's got to sell him while his value is super high, because they can get a couple picks out of him. I think some high picks, probably a first or second rounder in my opinion, because he is the only DB to win Defensive Player of Defensive Player of the Year in the last 10 or so years. So
yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you, Tim. I think we got what we could out of him. He basically won us that AFC championship against the Jaguars with that huge tip down. He's done his service here, but let's look at the cornerbacks in New England still. We have J.C. Jackson, who had, 8 interceptions last year, one of the most in the league.
Yeah.
We got Jonathan Jones, who is a great slot cornerback, in my opinion, very speedy cornerback. And then we got Jason McCourty, who is definitely a more than serviceable cornerback. So honestly, we're fine at that position. And if we can get some good value for Gilmore, then why not? I know there's rumors that we might move up in the draft, and Gilmore could be a huge piece for that. If we give up Gilmore in the 15th pick, we could be looking at a top 10 pick now and be picking from names like Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance. So, yeah, I definitely would be all in for a Gilmore trade.
I actually haven't heard that rumor, so the fact that you mention it to me is it definitely takes that monkey off my back a little bit more, because it's like, my God, is this team actually going to stick with Cam Newton, this dumpster fire of a player? Are they going to move on and get someone young? I hope we do. I hope we move up, because honestly,
that was dumpster fire of a player.
He is. Cam Newton. I mean, Duffy, look at the show title name. It's Unapologetic. I'm going to say
Unapologetic. Unapologetic. Cam Newton is he sucks. He sucks. He sucked this year. Will he suck next year? Probably. But Cam Newton, you got to remember that. I'm not a big Cam Newton fan. I got his jersey in the other room, but he's a dumpster fire of a player. He had 11.
This guy got the jersey.
11 rush touchdowns this season. He had the worst receiving core in New England Patriots history last year. We were talking about their shit tight ends. Pardon my French. I took 3 years of it. Currently taking a semester right now. But come on, dumpster of a player. I'm a former MVP, man.
I think you guys are wrong.
Wait, you're telling us we're wrong about Cam Newton?
I think Cam Newton's still got something left in the tank.
Yeah, we know you do.
Ben
traded for Cam. He traded for Cam in our connected.
Listen,
he puts him in the end of the game. It's awesome.
Listen, we can get Cam at a very discounted price again. I would love to bring in a former MVP, bring in some weapons. I would love to see what this guy can do. He rushed for over 500 yards last year, had a fantastic rushing year.
How many? What's the exact number? Do you know, Ben?
I think it was 11.
11. Now, I mean, we look at the passing numbers, obviously awful, but let's also look at the receivers that we had. Literally terrible. And if we look in comparison from Tom Brady's last year on the Patriots to Cam Newton's first year, Cam Newton actually had a higher completion percentage. So, if we can bring in some weapons for this guy, Cam Newton has always been a short yard passing QB. And that's what this Patriots offense is about. It's about establishing the run, check downs, short passes. So I really do think Cam Newton can flourish in this offense. I'm not going to say that this 1 year is basically the end of Cam Newton.
I mean, for me, it's kind of hard for me to agree, just because, I mean, majority of the time this guy wasn't passing for more than 15 passes a game. It seemed like the offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, was literally like, let's just not have Cam throw the ball, okay? He clearly can't handle that. So we'll just have everybody else do everything. And then, hey, he can handle running. He's a good runner. I mean, we've seen it happen. We see it on the tape, So just have him run. All right?
That's pretty
Sounds
much
good?
the whole season,
And you're talking about 4 games under 100. That's unacceptable.
That's
for
a quarter
any
of the
quarterback.
Season, that's terrible.
That's a sin.
Back-to-back weeks, too, if you remember.
What's that?
He had back-to-back games with under 100 passing yards. I think the Patriots won both of them. It was the Cardinals game, and I don't remember the other game, but it was he had some terrible outings. But continue, Chet.
That's just a sin if you're a quarterback. I'm sorry, but I mean, there's no way you can sleep at night calmly and wake up the next day feeling good about yourself. I wanted to puke after the Niners tore us apart, or any of these other games where he passed for under 100 yards. For me, that ship has sailed with Cam Newton. If he stays and he improves, cool. Honestly, I don't have much hope for the dude. I am totally pissed off by his tenure here. It just made me so angry and so unenthusiastic going into these Patriots games, which before, obviously, I'm just complaining at this point because, the past is the past. But you know what? We're here. This is where everything is. Screw Cam Newton. Get the hell out of the Patriots organization, please.
Hey,
Right.
I just got 2 things. I just got 2 things to say to you about that.
Okay.
So if we want to talk about QBs throwing under 100 yards a game, right? I know a guy down in Miami, Tua Tagovailoa, had multiple games with under 100 yards.
But we got to cut him some slack because he's young.
Are we already?
I almost cut him some slack.
No.
He had good receivers.
Number 2, the Patriots. This is shoulda, coulda, woulda. The Patriots were 2 plays away from being 9-7 this year. If we look back at week 2, if we can punch it in on the 1-yard line in Seattle, that's 8-8.
I couldn't even read that.
And then if Cam Newton doesn't fumble the ball in Buffalo, that's 9-7, and we might sneak into the playoffs. If we can bring in some weapons for this guy, the Patriots are going to be back in the playoffs next year. I really do think so. The true anchor of our defense, Donta Hightower, will be back. Patrick Chung will be back. This team's going to be back in the playoffs next year. I really think this year was just such an overreaction from so many people.
Honestly, I mean, we'll see. Right now, when I think of Cam Newton, I just want to put a hot iron on my cheek and just let it sit there a little bit. I mean, that's the way I'm thinking. I don't know about you, Duffy.
I mean, I like Cam. I mean, I don't really like Cam as a passer. I think he's inconsistent AF. To put it kind of PG. But I agree with him at some points. I think that if it is surrounded with some weapons, which they completely failed to do last year, then we could see them back in the playoffs. We were seeing the whole season. They're only a couple games away from being over 500. We saw them start 2-5 and then win 4 of the next 5 games. So still have a lot of talent on this roster. With all the guys who opted out coming back, like Donta Hightower, for example, like you're saying, Ben, the anchor of the defense. Or maybe it was Chet, I don't remember, but this team could really. I think the team can go 10-6, 9-7. But I've said this, I think, 3 shows in a row. I think the Patriots, they get him back for cheap. Or they should, because looking at a guy who was playing for basically the veterans minimum last year, a former MVP. I think it's a safe bet to sign him because you never know what he could do with another team. He could absolutely tear up another team, and you're like, damn, what it coulda, shoulda.
Yeah,
that will happen? Probably not. But I think that safest bet for Cam's career is to re-sign for cheap. Compete for the starting job because none of these rookie quarterbacks, as we know, are so to start in the NFL. It's the tough league to succeed in. Can he compete for the starting job next season? I really think so. If they just get some weapons, that's the biggest thing. Because Patriots, some games that he had under 100 yards because he had no one to throw to because no guys couldn't get open. It wasn't just all on Cam. Yeah, Cam made some really bad throws sometimes. Cam threw a lot of ducks. Cam missed open receivers. Cam hung to the ball. Cam held on to the ball too long. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when all of his receivers are draped, by 2-3 defenders at a time and no one's open, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he did all of this coming into a team that's had this established way of playing for 20 years. He came in with no preseason, no OTAs. He
Yeah.
basically just came into week 1 versus Miami, and he just had to make do with what he's got. I mean, there's no harm in giving this guy another $1 million this year and drafting someone like Mac Jones. You know what? If Cam Newton's throwing for like 87 yards a game, let's bench him and start this young guy. You know, I
Yeah.
really don't see any harm in bringing Cam Newton back.
Yeah.
I gotta get my Cam Newton jersey on next break. Just to get, is he the answer long term?
Yeah.
He might be the answer for one more season. I think it's one more season. Re-sign him. Let him compete for the starting job because he's not the future of the team. But you can, maybe play a Phillip Rivers role, be that little bridge quarterback that transitions from Brady to the next franchise QB. We'll see. Lead to the playoffs, get a couple weapons. Defense is still good, like we were saying. Kept them in a lot of games. One game that comes to mind that was on this field is the Denver Broncos game in Week 6. That was an inexcusable game. The Pats forced like 3 turnovers, 6 field goals, no touchdowns, and they lose 18-12. That's an inexcusable loss on the offense.
Yeah.
So this one's games that comes to mind. Niners game too. Score 6 points, 18 points at home in 2 weeks is not unacceptable. But a lot of it comes to the help that Cam had on offense. And if he can just really just get his chemistry with this team in the offseason, which he wasn't able to do last year at all, I think this team they could compete for a playoff spot. The division, I don't think so with Buffalo in that division. They're going to take the AFC East, but a wild card spot, maybe it's a 5, 6, 7 seed, maybe a 6 or 7 seed in my opinion. I think they could really, do that despite how tough the AFC is. They have one of those tough AFC games this year.
Yeah. Well, time will tell, but to bring it back to Stephon Gilmore real quick, if he was to be moved, where would he land? And for me, come back to me. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to think about this one.
I was hoping you'd go first because
I have no idea. But to be honest,
how about a team I brought up when I first came on, the Dallas Cowboys? Okay, this team's defense was seriously one of the most horrendous things I've ever seen on a football field last year.
One of the worst.
Easily.
Now, if they can bring in Stephon Gilmore, one of the most lockdown corners in the league, this could really turn their defense around. I mean, they have okay linebackers. I do like Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. I think they are good leaders for defense, but the secondary is hurting really bad, and Gilmore could be one key piece to really turning that around.
All right, I got a team, and it's a take who I've said this team's gonna make a big trade this offseason. I said it on TJ and B the other week. If the Packers don't trade Rodgers to Jacksonville, I think they're getting Stephon Gilmore. I think
they trade the pick to the New England Patriots.
No, they're not.
That's what I'm confused about.
They're making both those moves. That was just
even after he crushed their dreams in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. So the Green Bay Packers, Kevin King is a free agent this offseason, a guy who kind of arguably blew them the NFC Championship in many regards, allowing that touchdown in the first half and the PI in the fourth quarter. You bring Gilmore to this team, pair him up with Jair Alexander, give the Packers really the first. We haven't really seen an elite Green Bay Packers defense, really ever. Yeah. And I don't remember, when Rodgers won his first MVP, they were ranked last in the league. And, if they have that type of cornerback to him, give up some picks, they have some cap, depending on if they want to re-sign Aaron Jones too, which is huge, which I don't know if they will because, he's been elite running back. We've seen these elite running backs want a whole lot of money, their first shot free agency, so I don't know if they're going to re-sign him. Yeah. But Gilmore, if they can pair up Gilmore, Jair Alexander, those pass rushers too, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, and, pretty solid linebacking core, I think Green Bay, sees maybe another year or two of this Aaron Rodgers championship window expand.
All right, I got my team finally. So I thought about this one. We saw this team make a trade earlier this season. And, of course, that trade's not going to go through until, of course, in the next week or two. I'd say, once the new league year begins. So I think we're going to see the Detroit Lions make a run for it, because if I'm not mistaken, they just got themselves a buttload of draft picks that they are more than willing to spend.
It's true.
Why not bulk up now and start getting some key pieces on that defense? And I think Stephon Gilmore is a perfect fit for them in terms of bulking that secondary up. And then you get some draft, and then you get the Detroit Lions, who are the 4th overall pick in the draft. And you still have a wide open lane to draft any quarterback besides Trevor Lawrence. I think it's a perfect fit.
He could be a great mentor for their first pick last year, and Jeff Okudah too. I mean, he's an insane talent out of Ohio State. Yeah, I like that fit.
I mean, I would completely be head over heels over this idea if Matt Patricia was still running the show in Detroit. A lot of those, former Patriots go to the Lions.
Yeah.
But, it's not a bad idea. Realistically, do I think Detroit uses all this real estate on a cornerback like Stephon Gilmore, who's just turned 30 years old, 31 years old? No, I don't really think so. But that would be good for, like I was saying, it could be a great mentor, Jeff Okudah, the 3rd overall pick last year in the draft. But I just don't see them using this type of real estate on Stephon Gilmore, because they got a pretty good amount of picks. I think it was 2 first-rounders, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 first-rounders, I don't even know, but
yes,
2-rounder too. So it'd be tough. I mean, they got the 4th pick this year. I think they wouldn't want to give that for Gilmore. I don't see them, stocking up on corners. It's kind of a similar argument to the Patriots, who have an elite cornerback in J.C. Jackson. Would the Lions really want to bulk up on that position that hard? A team that has a lot of other issues on defense too. Their secondaries, it's terrible. It was the worst in the league last year.
Yeah,
maybe them in Dallas, but we also saw their pass rush sucks. Their linebackers, they can't really stop the run or the pass. Needs a lot of help. Gilmore would be a lot of help, but it would probably come at a pretty reasonable price. So,
yeah. Well, we're running this segment to the near wire, so we're going to take a commercial break, but when we get back, we're going to do a speed run through the Boston Celtics, the Boston Bruins, and, of course, your Boston Red Sox. So we're going to hit a commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about those 3 teams. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy here on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Getting right back into it, we're going to start talking about the Boston Celtics, who last week we were talking about as they lost to the Atlanta Hawks. Very disappointing. They've lost to them 3 out of 4 this season. And now you look at this team. They finally started to get things together. Thank the Lord. I mean, look at the Yeah, thank God. Honestly, there is a God in this case. So you see they get a big win over the Indiana Pacers, 118-112. The Wizards, they beat by a point, but they did it after losing to them 104-91. They win 111-110. And now a huge win. Despite not having Kawhi Leonard, they managed to defeat Paul George and the Los Angeles Clippers, 117-112. Guys, let's get into that game a little bit. That's a huge win for the Boston Celtics to really set the tone for them in the East.
Yeah, it was great for my live bet. $3 on the Celtics. They were like plus 120. It was great. I saw the game like everyone.
How much did you win?
I won $360 for a $3 bet. It was dope. But Celtics, three wins in a row. They're kind of hitting their stride. A lot of inconsistencies. We've seen Tatum and Brown struggle recently. Tatum only scored 14 last night. Brown with only 18. But other guys stepping in huge for this team, which was really a thing that they were struggling with. When they were losing games against the Hawks and the Wizards, was their bench. Their bench was struggling. They were banged up. We saw Pritchard out for a week, I think, a week or two. And with this core coming back, with this with his team healthy, I think that with the All-Star break, a much-needed break for the Celtics team, that 3-game win streak right now could be 4 if they beat the Raptors tomorrow night. I think they can ride on this break with some momentum and take a little bit of a rest and come back from Atlanta feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Celtics team, we do this every single year. We have our stretches where we look like a legitimate championship contender, you know? And then we have our stretches where we look like a bottom 10 team in the league. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? Now, I think that stretch happened way earlier in the season now. So we got that stretch out of the way. I think we're going to see the Celtics really turn this around and really look like we can compete in the East, maybe to get to the championship. I doubt we could get past Brooklyn this year. I really do.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing with me is like, I just don't think this team can really make that championship push, you know. I think we still need to add someone else, you know. I know everyone's pushing for Danny Ainge to make a trade by the deadline, and I am too, but it's just like, who can we really get that would really put this team in championship contender status? Because, you know, as good as we're playing right now, Kemba finally turning it around, shutting the critics up, I just don't see them as a championship contender right now. And being a Boston fan, you know, we hold very high expectations, and that expectation is to ultimately get to the championship. We're coming on this 4 or 5 year period now where we just make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and then we get bounced. So it's like we need to make that championship push, and I don't really know what could give us that, but Danny Ainge needs to do something.
Yeah, a lot of needs to be met with this team because, I mean, like we've talked before, you can't just rely on Brown, Tatum, and Walker to do the bulk of the work. You need help from that bench. I mean, last night they did get the help. The bench delivered 38 points from the reserve. And then if you look at the rest, Kemba with 25, Brown with 18, and Tatum with 14, and Thompson with 13. So a very good stretch from their starting core. But regardless, Ben, like you said, this market is tight. It's very tough to find somebody right now, and especially with teams like the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks all being prime contenders for that 1 seed here in the East. It's very tough to see the Celtics really propel themselves into that 1 seed just by the talent that's based on those teams. Then when you're talking about the finals themselves, when they get there, they're more than likely either to face teams like the Utah Jazz, the LA Clippers, or the Lakers for that matter. So, I mean, there's a lot on their plate.
Yeah, and I agree with Ben in the sense that I don't think this team is ready to contend for a championship this year. You know, we saw them lose some pieces like Gordon Hayward, who was a big loss in retrospect because he's been lighting up in Charlotte this year. You know, inconsistency off the bench, and with teams like Brooklyn in the conference this year, the star team they have, I don't see any way the Celtics get past them. And the division's tough this year too. You know, we're seeing a division, the Atlantic Division, which I think the bottom 4 teams are all within a game of each other. So they have to win those really close games too. You know, we've seen the New York Knicks really hit their stride as of late. They're the 4th seed in the East as we speak. The Raptors, you know, they've pushed back up to 500 after a really rough start to the season. And the Celtics, they're right there too, 18 and 17. So gonna have to win these really close games, really tough games. And, you know, can they do it night in, night out? I don't really think so. But, you know, I think this team, I think they do considerably better. I think they're going to do considerably better second half of the year than the first half of the year, and they're going to hit the stride a little bit. You know, they're going to definitely make the playoffs as, you know, a mid-tier seed in the East, and but championship level team, I don't think so this season. It's going to be tough. You know, this is a team that's middle in the pack and rebounding, not really, you know, strong on the boards. Really have a big name big that's going to, you know, run the pick and rolls and, you know, get the rebounds and score a lot of points. And that's, you know, it's the lack of depth on this team as compared to other years, I think, is kind of the main reason why I don't really see this team as contenders.
Yeah, definitely in agreement there. This is definitely a team that has a lot of promise, but not enough to really push themselves to what we hold our Boston teams to. But speaking of a team that we talked about recently, that, of course, it seems to be the only good team right now in Boston. The Boston Bruins have hit themselves in a nice area where they're in the blues. And I shouldn't say nice because it's not nice. But I mean, it's a tough division. You look at the East, what do they even call it now?
The East, it's East, North, South, West this year.
It's ridiculous the way they've changed these divisions.
I didn't even know
that. Yeah, they changed everything up this season for COVID. So all the Canadian teams will be playing in the same division. That is the North Division. The Toronto Maple Leafs are currently leading the league.
They can only play themselves in the division too, which is tough.
Yeah, and when I look at the Canadian division, you're looking at nothing but the Toronto Maple Leafs. The only team behind them is the Winnipeg Jets at 29, and the Toronto Maple Leafs currently have 36 points. They are the front runners for the President's Cup trophy right now, but the Boston Bruins, they've gotten themselves into a little bit of a struggle. We saw them at the 1 seed and then plummet to the 3rd seed and give way to the Capitals, which they are playing live right now in Boston. But tough losses to the Islanders, who currently have 2nd place, and then to the New York Rangers. They got blown out in Madison Square Garden 6-2. They did come back and win the next game 4-1. This team still has promise, but like we've said the last couple of weeks, this is a team that definitely if they want to win a Stanley Cup, it's got to be now. Because you look at players like Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, they just gave away Zdeno Chara to the team that currently leads our division. It's tough. You're not talking about a core that has a lot of youth anymore. This is a team that they've got the talent. It just comes down to the execution, because we've seen the past few years them just fall very, very short of where they actually should be.
Yeah,
and we know we can get there. 2 years ago, we're facing the Blues in the championship. But like you just said, Chet, we need to make that championship push this year, because time isn't stopping for anybody, and Bergeron is definitely going to retire soon, as well as Marchand, maybe.
On the team for like a decade now, so
yeah.
His window's closing. Like you were saying, the championship window really coming to a close for the Boston Bruins. They've been up there each of the last few years. The President's Trophy of the year, I think the year they made it to the Stanley Cup final. But they've really struggled against these good teams in their division this year, which could be their kryptonite down the road.
Yeah.
1-4 against the top 2 teams in the division, the Islanders and Caps. Like you said, they're playing the Caps right now. But especially the New York Islanders, they just lost them 7-2. They lost 2 times to them before that, and they only have 5 losses this year, and 4 of them are to those 2 teams. So if they want to contend too, they gotta, like the Celtics, they gotta win these tough games against the really legit teams in their division. So they just gotta be more consistent.
Yeah, consistency is definitely key. And I mean, this Bruins game right now, it is currently at 0-0 there in Washington. So we will see what happens. Obviously, we can't call the result here. Hoping the Bruins win, but the Capitals always seem to have our number. So we'll see what happens. To finalize our look at Boston sports, we take a look at the Boston Red Sox, who recently just started spring training 4 days ago. They lost their first 2 games, but now they're on a win streak. 9-3 against the Tampa Bay Rays and 14-6 against the Twins. The big problem with this team, and I can't say this enough, I really can't. I mean, pitching. My God, the pitching is god-awful here. I mean, it's terrible. So, I mean...
What about Chris Sale coming back this year? Do you think how much of an impact will he have as the ace?
I mean, I know, the thing is...
It's not enough depth around him.
For me, the problem is we lost a lot of the pitching since the World Series victory. We lost a lot of the bats since the World Series, but I mean, the batting's still there with Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, and JD Martinez. A good trio right there, and some young guys coming up from that to build on that core. But Chris Sale, just watching him pitch, I mean, it's a very awkward throw. I mean, he throws his arm out, it looks like, on nearly every pitch. Tommy John surgery is very serious for most pitchers. So, I mean, I don't know yet. I think he'll be good, but I think we'll probably see a little bit of decline. But then you have people like Martin Perez and all these other pitchers coming out of God knows where, these old veterans. So at the end of the day, really, with the Boston Red Sox, they need pitching because the relief, it's not there anymore. players like I'm trying to think here. This is really tough. I haven't had my mind on baseball in a while, but
Me neither.
anyways,
Me neither.
yeah. Anyways, it's finally coming back. Love
I'm have to start
baseball.
watching though, for the sake of the show.
Oh,
Yeah, definitely start watching this year.
I'm
sure.
huge. I'm huge into the majors, so it kind of gets me very upset that I can't think of a name. But like regardless, with this team, it's the pitching. The pitching is absolutely horrible. It's been horrible for just the last year. I mean, you're only talking 80 games, but they were still bottom of the East, and now the East is bulking up, and teams like the New York Yankees and the Tampa Bay Rays are usually the runaway favorites for the AL East. So time will tell, but right now, Red Sox, they look good at bats wise, but pitching, they definitely need somebody else besides Eduardo Rodriguez or Nathan Eovaldi to really complement what Chris Sale has to offer, because you need starters, but regardless, they need pitching all around. So a great way to end the podcast there, covering Boston sports. We will give you coverage, of course, of these teams weekly. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy will be live here on the Sports Fan Base Network. But I would like to extend a thank you once again to Ben for joining us tonight. Ben, thank you for all of your great insight on the sports world.
Thank you, boys, for having me on. It's been,
it's
been a great time
always
again.
Welcome. You are always welcome.
Always welcome.
Anytime I'll come on.
Yes,
Word.
sir.
Sounds great to me. But until next week, thank you all for tuning into Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy. Go Patriots, and we will see you next week at 7 p.m.
Peace.
Have a good one, boys.